will Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin, and the rest of the crew with Front Row Motorsports, will they be racing in 2025? We hope to at least get to some sort of avenue towards a conclusion in the next 60 minutes. We're not. Trust me. It's too far from being concluded with this new charter agreement with NASCAR and its team owners, not including 2311 and Front Row Motorsports. Coming up this hour, Jesse Love will be here in the Freak Nation, running for his first Xfinity Series championship with Richard Childress Racing. Ron Capps, NHRA Funny Car driver, team owner, championship Funny Car team owner and driver Ron Capps will be joining us this hour. And the Roval's coming up this weekend, next weekend, depending on how you look at your week. Some of the drivers, they don't want the chaos. They think it's a gimmick. We'll hear from those drivers.
The changes.
You're right.
The changes to the Roval are a gimmick.
Yes, the changes. Getting back into our conversation in the last segment with the lawsuit between Front Row Motorsports, 2311. 2311, the majority owners are Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan. Statman Scat laid it out there nicely last hour. If you didn't see that or hear that, be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We'll have it there for you to get the insight with your Statman Scat. But Jeffrey Kessler, who is a renowned attorney that I've seen everything about this guy, but when it comes to antitrust, sports attorneys, I've seen this guy numerous times. My apologies because my memory isn't serving me correctly. What's the big lawsuit that he was involved in recently?
He's involved in the NIL kind of rights lawsuit.
Got it.
With the
college players.
That's right. Okay. So Michael Jordan and crew went out and hired this guy. Evidently knows his stuff when it comes to those two topics in particular. And we're trying to dumb this down for me and some of you out there when it comes to understanding this. Because really,
none of us have Kessler's knowledge of what's going on. So let me add something before we get too crazy here.
Right.
In doing some of the research, Bob Jenkins, they say he's a restaurant owner. He owns more than 250 restaurants, Taco Bell's, KFC's, A&W root beers, all sorts of stuff all over the country. The craziest part of this is that his food business is called Charter Foods.
Come on.
That's such a great nugget.
When I saw that, I had to compose myself. And when Michael McDowell just mentioned that Jenkins was spending his own money, I would have thought that his cars would be plastered with KFC and Taco Bell and A&W root beer or some version of that, because that's the new business, that the B2B and not B to consumer, business to consumer. It's becoming a B2B reality. So I was trying to think, I don't know if any of his cars have had that sponsorship on them. Maybe some of the people in our chat rooms can tell us that. But yeah, there was no reason for him other than this is the way I've always done it, so I'm going to keep doing it that way. There's no reason for him to do it that way anymore. That's the point.
Loves is a major player with Michael McDowell's number 34 car and with Front Row Motorsports. And I know Loves has some chain restaurants inside of it, whether it's Taco Bell, Subway, A&W. So maybe there's a little B2B there.
Exactly. Maybe that's the connection that makes sense. Because in reality, all the money that's being poured into any motorsport, Formula One, NASCAR, it doesn't make sense unless you're doing business with somebody to recoup that money. That's whether you're Penske, Gibbs, or Hendrick, or John Force, or anybody in motorsports, you've got to be able to recoup that money. Otherwise, the sponsors aren't going to get on board.
Depending on if I took my Adderall, sometimes thoughts will come and go, and a thought just came to me, which tells me I didn't take it. Of all the owners to file a lawsuit, and maybe, again, it's just me trying to make sense of all this, Michael Jordan, 2311, and Front Row kind of makes sense, but really Michael Jordan does. Michael Jordan is relatively a new owner in NASCAR. Hendricks, Gibbs, Jack Roush, Penske, the foundation that they've created inside NASCAR. Again, pardon me as I kind of work this out as we talk. Them going after NASCAR will have a bigger effect, damage, if this doesn't work out in the owner's favor than Michael Jordan. However, with Michael Jordan, depending on what side of the lawsuit you're on, you really don't want this guy going after you, or you really want this guy going after you. It's Michael freaking Jordan.
Yeah, one of the biggest names globally. Mm-hmm. But they really don't want Kessler and Curtis. I can't
Polk.
Polk, yeah. They don't want them, especially Kessler. If Kessler can take down the NCAA, what can he do with NASCAR? And NASCAR is vulnerable in this unless they can prove that our private business deserves the same antitrust protections that major sports leagues like baseball, football, basketball, and hockey, and some and degree the MLS, that we deserve the same thing that they do, even though all the money comes to us and goes to pay for our yachts in Daytona.
Oh, snap. I will say that it was interesting to hear from several people that I trust. A common theme in the NASCAR family, shall we say, this weekend was that, hey, some of these owners did sign this contract because this has been a successful business for them over so many decades that it's like, why not sign it? Yes, are we just too satisfied with the status quo? Potentially, but it has given a great source of income to them and all of their employees. And they didn't want to risk having to eventually say, hey, to their employees, we're not racing next year just because we don't agree with this new charter agreement. They didn't want to do that to their employees. So there are other tentacles to looking, or just other sides to look at this story from. And I mean, Richard Childress, it's interesting to me. He signed it, and now we're hearing this weekend, Bob Pockras had a great interview with him, completely, like Kenny said earlier, took everyone by surprise, in which he said, yeah, I get this thing at 6/27, and I'm being told I have to sign it by 12 or I won't have my charters. I won't have my team next year. So yeah, that kind of puts the fear of God in them. They need to sign it. So there's a few things, like Statman said, this is going to get crazy in the courts. Yeah, will it go to a settlement? I don't know, to avoid some of this mess. We'll see.
What you just said, Crash, is that really is going to be another important key factor in this. The major teams, I keep bringing up Gibbs, Penske, and Hendrick. Mm-hmm. The major teams want to get beyond this because they have so much more at stake in that they're already doing B2B business, especially Gibbs. Gibbs signed a deal with venture capitalists earlier this year that are doing business with Toyota and all this intertwining of things that are far beyond who won at Talladega Sunday. So they all right, cool. Here, sign this. Leave me alone. I want to make I'm making money here. Leave me alone. I think it's the smaller teams, like JTG and who won today, and 2311 and Front Row, and all of these smaller teams are the ones that aren't haven't figured this out or don't have the ability to get in there and do the B2B stuff that Gibbs, Hendrick, and Penske are doing.
Freak Nation, I think we're going to bump Ron Capps to next week. We had every intention to go 2 segments in this. We still got so much to hit. We're going to hear from Denny Hamlin, suing NASCAR, running for a championship. Come on, man. And more from Jeffrey Kessler, the attorney. It's great insight from individuals smack dab in the middle of this. And where's Trackhouse in all this? Where's Pitbull?
Trackhouse.
Got a break. Got a break. Freak Nation, make your plans now to get yourself a new set of General tires. And if you buy 4 qualifying SUV or light truck tires, you'll get up to $100 back with a Visa prepaid card. Fall's here. Winter's coming. Wet weather. You want to make sure you're on a new set of General tires. For more information, check it out at GeneralTire.com. That's GeneralTire.com. General Tire, the official tire of SpeedFreaks for over 2 decades. Freak Nation, we continue our conversation regarding the lawsuit. It's worthy of this continued discussion, Freak Nation, because it can affect next year and beyond with your favorite drivers. In particular, 2311 with Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace, Front Row Motorsports. Jeffrey Kessler is the attorney representing both of those entities. And Joe Gibbs, Hendrick, Penske, Trackhouse, JTG, RFK, Childress. All of these teams have signed this new charter agreement, but 2 in particular have not, and they have filed an antitrust lawsuit against NASCAR. Jeffrey Kessler talking about 2025 and the injunction that they hope to create.
They are both determined they will compete no matter what, right? It determines how they will be able to compete. You know, if we get our injunction, they'll be able to take charters and compete as a charter team. If they don't get the injunction, they will have to compete as open teams next year, but they will be there no matter what. They're not giving up on NASCAR, at least for next year. I don't know how long you can keep competing as an open team, but the idea would be for some time they could do that, and they will at least go out trying to do that next year to start. But we hope it doesn't come to that. We expect that we have a good chance of getting our injunction, and then they will just compete as charter teams.
So you basically, if they don't get the injunction and they compete as open teams, then you're continuing to just basically spend a ton of money that you're fighting against having the need to spend in the first place. Oh.
No, a bigger issue here is, imagine if you are a sponsor and you've given 2311, for example, or Front Row or anybody else, you've given them $15 million. The charter guarantees you will be one of the 36 cars in the race.
Right.
Now, what if you don't sign the charter? The charter's taken away and you have to compete for those final 4 spots. And my $15 million that I've given you is not as strong as it used to be. So at some point, the teams are going to have to say, or have to tell me, the sponsor, here's your money back, or I'm going to do something else to make sure we can continue to do business based on what I sold you. They don't want to say, we're fighting to get a revenue share. Yeah, screw you. We want to be in the race. That's what we paid you the money to do. And if they can't guarantee that, they could plan to be in the race all they want to. But Michael Jordan's $1 billion is going to disappear real quick if he's got to pay all the bills.
And we're talking McDonald's, DoorDash, those Nike even. So, yeah, those are the companies that are saying, hey, where's my money going?
Denny Hamlin on trying to win a championship and suing NASCAR. What do they call it? Strange bedfellows?
I think it's pretty simple. You just got to prepare the best that you can and do the best job that you can on Sunday. I think that, I would really it's more of a question for my team, and I would ask them, has their driver never not been prepared? Has he never given 100%? Never. Certainly I talked about it probably a year or so ago when it came down to this, and I started becoming more comfortable with whatever the result is, because I knew that, no matter what, whether I win a championship or not, I always was going to make sure I could sleep at night knowing that I gave it my all for my team. And certainly there's been some circumstances over time that I haven't been able to control, but I've learned to not let those situations affect me. Certainly this is a situation I can control, but I always give the team proper preparation and make sure that when I get in the race car on Sunday, they know through my actions on the track that I'm 100% in it and focused.
There's the closest comparison I can make to that real quick. Denny Hamlin racing in NASCAR while suing the sport he's racing for. Brian Flores, the former head coach of the Miami Dolphins, he is now the defensive coordinator of the 5-0 Minnesota Vikings, and he is still, his lawsuit is still ongoing with the National Football League after 2.5+ years. And that's the closest comparison I can make, which is, well, it just doesn't happen. And one of the things that Jeffrey Kessler talked about too, that I want to add on to this and make sure we get him to weigh in on, is you guys were just talking about these smaller teams and why are they signing on. You mentioned Trackhouse, Kenny, among others.
Right.
He talks about Jeffrey Kessler, the attorney for the team suing NASCAR. He talks about 2016, and he talks about how many smaller teams were chartered at that time. And he explains that those teams basically no longer exist because of these antitrust practices happening in NASCAR. Real quick,
Wow.
I have a list. Are you ready for a list here from 2016 of the teams that no longer exist?
I do want to know this, yes.
Okay, here we go. 2016, ladies and gentlemen, teams that no longer exist, or at least exist in a different facet. Okay, Stewart-Haas Racing, gone after this year. Tommy Baldwin Racing doesn't exist anymore. Front Row Motorsports is suing NASCAR now. Go Fast Racing, Bobby Labonte was the driver that year for Go Fast, gone. Richard Petty Motorsports doesn't exist. It's now Legacy Motor Club. RFK Racing now has, or Roush Fenway now has Kozlowski with them. BK Racing doesn't exist anymore. Furniture Row Racing won the championship with Martin Truex Jr. and doesn't exist anymore. And that was 8 years ago, man. And all these small teams are gone or have merged in some way, shape, or form.
And think about this. I mean, NASCAR, stock car racing was formed from the grassroots of stock cars. And
Runners, guys breaking the law.
Grassroots. Liquid grass. That's what they're running.
They were running between the grass on the third, hustling booze.
Yep. Again,
don't get confused. These charters aren't franchises, and Kessler kind of dropped that in there. That's going to be at the core of this. This is not the same as a franchise, the exclusive right to do business in a specific place. These are charters that, the argument is that these charters don't have any value. This is part of NASCAR's monopoly. That's what they're going to argue in court.
Freak Nation.
How much? We don't
Pressure.
have time, do
Yep,
we?
we got a break.
Yeah. I was going to say, how much do these the value of these Stewart-Haas charters, is it down or up with this?
I think they were down. It's about $25 million or so, expectedly, although nobody's really saying, which is insane.